It's been a long, long time since I've been to a McDonald's, but I can tell you that if I get a hamburger from a McDonald's in Orlando, Florida, and I have one from Wichita Falls, Texas, why'd I pick Wichita? I have no idea. But if you put them side by side, they're going to look the same, they're going to taste the same, and they're going to be wrapped the same. That's consistency. Wouldn't you like to know the restaurants and Disney properties are consistent, or Universal, or SeaWorld for that matter? Well, how about the menus? Do they change the menus? Do you look at a menu online and then go to a restaurant and they're different? Or if you go to one of your favorite restaurants, like let's just say the Grand Floridian Cafe, and you get there and you ask for the lobster thermidor. Yeah, that's a hamburger with lobster on it. One of the most delicious hamburgers on Disney property, and they took it away. Well, I'd like to know that before I go there. Today, Jon Self joins us to tell us all about that and more. He's a food blogger, he's a food critic, and a food connoisseur, and he frequents the parks and the restaurants to let you know what's going on. Tony and I jump right in the conversation with Jon. This is episode 318.
From the Crush Studio in sunny Florida, this is the Disney Crush podcast. And now your two tempests in a teacup, Dave and Tony Ann.
Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for indulging me. Yeah, I like the way you assume that I did something in my off time as a freelance writer these days. What is that like?
Well, I want to know, like, do you have places you would like, you go,
right,
you prefer to go when you're not forced to go? And I know it's got, they twist your arm. Today you have to go to Sanaa.
That's correct. They don't say that have to go to Sanaa. It's disappointing.
Today you have to go to Cosmic Rays and try this cheeseburger that they put Cheeto dust on and macaroni and cheese. And
today you have to go to Cosmic Rays because there's a new Greek salad.
Oh,
that's been added to the menu. That was Tuesday.
Okay, well, a Greek salad sounds better than Cheeto dust. Did they put Cheeto dust on the Greek salad?
Oh, that would be very Cosmic Rays, but no, they did not. Or here are the 6 donuts you get to have tomorrow morning, Jon.
Well, that's not so bad, except unless you're trying to like watch your figure.
Well, how do I say this nicely? I am a single male again, so maybe I should watch my figure.
Andy Hoffman is trying to call me. I will not answer the phone. He's trying to be smart. He knows we're recording. He
calls every week, though, right?
Yeah, and he actually is calling.
At least he tries to.
Change my number.
I know what that's like. You can change your number.
Yeah.
Done that.
Good. So Jon, how did you get started in what you're in case people don't know, you're a food blogger. I know you've blogged for different outlets.
Right. I am completely 100% freelance. I've been completely freelance for I think since I started doing this. I started doing this full time in September 2022. Mm-hmm. And so I've written for as many as 20 or 21 different sites. I'm down to 12 now.
That's really cool.
Now, just because you write for a site doesn't mean you're doing a lot of writing for a site. Like, let's say I write for USA Today.
Okay.
Well, just because you write 2 articles for USA Today and you make maybe $85, $90, you're still working for them.
Right.
So I'm putting my air quotes up that no one can see in the podcast. But
how did you get started with that?
Well, I come from, as my Twitter handle gives me away, as Pastor Jon Self. I have an extensive background as a minister, missionary, student minister, teaching some seminary. So I was writing in the academic world, in the theological academic world, those complicated things, trying to explain different perspectives and different worldviews so that people could get that. And then my wife at the time, we were making vacations down to Orlando. Mm-hmm. And then I would start meeting with people, and I met, people like Seth Kubersky, who writes the unofficial guide for Universal Orlando, and other people like that. And I don't know if you're aware of this. People who love theme parks, apparently, sometimes they have trouble with grammar, and they like people who can write with proper grammar. I mean, there are some great writers out there.
Yeah.
But I'll edit their blogs, and I'll be like, I better be making as much as they made for this writing because I'm working as hard as they did. Because you're doing
just as much.
Right. And so I started doing a little bit of that, and that's how I paid for vacations, because I'm not saying that the average clergy member is underpaid. I mean, I got 4, 5, 6 weeks off a year, depending on how I did it. Mm-hmm. But you have to be able to afford to go somewhere.
Right. Especially.
So I would go and write so much stuff, and for Touring Plans is how it started, and other sites like that. And so I would write for them, and then that would pay for the vacation.
Okay.
And so it made the whole thing kind of work. And then eventually it became a part-time job that I would do on my Friday mornings for 4 hours every week. And then by default, it's now become what I do for a living. Traveling as a vagabond.
That's amazing. Do you go anywhere else besides the theme parks? Do you go to other vacation destinations?
Go to other theme park resorts, not resorts, but like Kentucky Kingdom or Cedar Point or I scheduled it, got rearranged. When you came down the first weekend in November, I think that was right.
Yeah, we always miss each other.
I forget. You live in this state. When you visited Orlando, I was originally doing a dining view of 3 new restaurants opening in Philadelphia. And so then I do stuff in Texas and that kind of stuff. It's travel. But obviously I'm doing that freelance for sites, or I'm filling in as a reporter for certain prominent theme park media sites because somebody's on maternity leave or things like that.
Okay. So you came from being a pastor. What's your food? I mean, are you a foodie? Do you know anything about, like, how did people decide this guy can write about food?
Well, I was given a lot of sites I write for now, and I still write for. They were giving me a lot of freedom in writing. They were like, just write whatever you want. Give us 5 blogs a week. I don't care. And I was like, well, I have to eat. And so that's really where that came from. It really evolves from, I think you can find this, I think it's still up at touringplans.com, where when Everglades Donut opened at Disney Springs, and then there was Voodoo Donut over at Universal Orlando, we did a comparison of the two, and do we deserve these donuts or something, some whatever lame title me and Julia came up with. And so that become, hey, he knows how to write. And then a bunch of other sites were like, can you start writing the food section for us? And can you do this for us? And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I obviously traveling as a missionary, I'd been in Southeast Asia, I'd been in Islamic countries, I've been in a lot of places culturally to have an idea.
You're open to flavors, to different flavors.
Even something you can relate to. I remember writing an article for some delicious group. We'll let you figure out who it was, where we did an analysis of why do people who grew up in New York want certain things from their pizza, and the people in Chicago think this is pizza, and the people in LA think this is pizza, and the people in and I'm like, well, it's because there's lots of reasons psychologically, but there's also the fact that it's different ingredients and different water and different everything.
Right.
So,
David, you got any questions for Jon?
I think he's kind of a food connoisseur now. Yeah. I see him all the time in the park. So,
you mean
have you guys met?
We have never met.
Well, I mean, I see you on Facebook. I see that you're posting that you're in the parks all the time.
Right.
I hear that's my job.
So he's become kind of a food. He's a food critic, a food connoisseur, a foodie, if you will, right? Yeah, yeah.
Which I think that's fair, and it's given me enough credibility that this is probably not the format to announce it with. But if you follow me on social media, there'll be a brand new website coming out, maybe by the time this podcast releases, which will kind of solve and answer a lot of questions people have about Disney food. Because let's just be honest, how many times have you gone to a restaurant and the menu didn't match what you were told, and the prices weren't right, or this wasn't that? And then I know I was with Scott and Karen and Jennifer and Jason at Abracadabra, and literally, I'm talking about the new website and what we've been working on for months and months and months. And then the waitstaff person hands a menu down. The online menu is not correct. This menu is correct. And I'm like, how the heck's the average guest supposed to know that?
Yeah.
And so, but there is a lot of, like, if you go through all the festival food, how do you define spicy for people? What's a spicy tamale and what's not a spicy tamale? What's too much? And it's really a question of what's dining for the average theme park guest and what's dining for, let's say I'm going to Ravello at Four Seasons, or I'm hitting I'm going to the Palm over at Hard Rock. What level of spice or seasoning should I expect?
Okay.
And then it gets into really complicated stuff that I'm really trying to get a grasp of. How much is something really worth?
That's interesting. Yeah.
And that was a tricky one, because that's what got me started originally, because, I was traveling, and, well, how does somebody budget for a trip to Walt Disney World or Universal Orlando or even SeaWorld on their food? And so you have to really realistic thing. Is it really worth it? And deciding what's worth it is really hard. It's not what I think. It's what most people would think.
Right. It's relative.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different idea of what's worth it.
Right. You don't mind paying the money if you get a good meal.
Most people don't mind paying the money. There's a certain percentage of people, whether it's Disney World or Universal or Cedar Point, who mind, but they just want to complain to complain. But you're right.
I think I'm married to one of those people.
You may be, based on what I've heard, but I don't want to disparage someone I've never met.
I think so.
Yeah, but it's just a question of, and how do you decide whether it's worth it or not? Is it worth it because I'm actually working on a project today about, is it worth it because the character interaction was really good? Or was it worth it because the view from Topolino's bar was really nice?
Right.
Or was it worth it because I got to watch the fireworks from California Grill? Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert, one of those I don't think is even close to worth it. And I'll let you figure out what the last one was. Okay. And so it's just a question of trying to decide that. And do I want to fight the battle of the prefix menu?
Yeah.
That's really a problem at Disney World right now.
Dave and Veronica, you guys don't like the prefix menus because that's not the way you eat.
Right. But I think most people go to the theme park and they expect theme park food. They don't expect to go to Disney World and find fine cuisine. That's just kind of, I don't know. When you get something like that, it's kind of unexpectedly. But there are some really nice sit downs and some really good chefs in Walt Disney World. And I don't think people are aware of that.
I see so many people that they say, I went to Disney and all they had was chicken fingers and hamburgers. And I'm like, where were you? Because I go to Disney and it's hard sometimes to find chicken fingers and hamburgers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unless you're at Magic Kingdom, then it's really easy.
Well, that's my favorite. That's my least favorite.
Yeah, food wise.
Yeah, trust me. I'm getting old, and there's quite a few more gray hairs I have now. But the trip to, now that I'm a local, I think you guys had somebody on a couple weeks ago who's a local and hates going to Magic Kingdom, or it's too much work to go to Magic Kingdom. I get that.
Yeah, Nick. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't remember. I get that now because I feel the same way at Magic Kingdom.
Right.
It's just too much work. And then for me personally, it's too much work. And I don't intentionally, when I have the freedom, go to a restaurant to review something I know is going to be bad. However, there's a higher percentage chance that's going to happen at Magic Kingdom. It's either going to be way overpriced. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Cinderella Roll Table. Or it's going to be just okay.
Subpar.
That's the best I can hope for. Yeah.
And there's going to have flaming hot Cheeto dust on it.
It might have flaming hot Cheeto dust because, of course, all of us food bloggers have to be there the first day when all the stuff
you had to try the 50th anniversary hot dog with the strawberry and the funnel cake on it.
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tried it too. Somebody in this conversation refused to put it in their mouth.
Absolutely would not. No, absolutely not.
It was okay.
I thought it was gross.
It was okay.
Wow.
But, you kind of knew it wasn't going to be good to start with.
The food critic says it was okay.
It was okay. That's kind of like, spoiler alert, all food critics have certain code words they use.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm going to ruin Guy Fieri here for a second. If Guy Fieri is ever doing one of his shows and then he has something, he says, this is good. That means it was terrible, by the way, just in case you're wondering. So I've now ruined that for you. Okay is me being pastoral.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Well, it wasn't terrible.
I'm not a food critic. I can tell you it was awful.
Right. Yeah.
And I can tell you that I'm not a foodie and it looked terrible. I didn't have to taste it.
Terrible. It wasn't to the level of whatever that was, to this day, still the only Walt Disney World food that I did not finish, because I grew up in one of those Judeo-Christian ethic households where you must eat all your food no matter what, which is a problem as opposed to some of my colleagues. I think it was the Hades hot dog from Friar's Nook.
Oh, yes.
It was so bad. It was awful. That's the only thing I haven't finished. And I tried really hard.
Okay.
Because I was afraid my mom would come from Arkansas and stab me for not finishing it. So I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying it's true.
I grew up in one of those households too. We had to finish everything. Yeah. And we'd sit there sometimes for an hour and a half. And yeah, it was bad.
I'm the oldest of 5, so I remember those days.
I remember putting stuff in napkins. We did anything we could just to get rid of it. Turned their head or turned their back for a minute. We were trying to do something with the food that we didn't want to eat. All right. Well, I want to, since we're talking about these restaurants and stuff, I'm kind of interested in finding out what is your favorite sit down in the parks, in any of the parks, and your quick service.
All of Walt Disney World, or
all of Walt Disney World, in just Walt Disney World.
Like if you weren't getting paid to go somewhere.
Is somebody else paying for it?
No, if you were going to pay for if you were going to spend your own money.
If I'm paying for it, ironically, if you follow me on social media, you're going to figure this out really fast. I'm going to go to homecoming. That'll be my first choice. Then, even though I know that some of my colleagues have had different opinions lately, and I'm going to check here pretty soon, I'm still a huge fan of Topolino's. I still think it's worth the hype.
Okay.
At least in my last couple experiences. Quick service off the top of my head, because I was going to write these down, but I got busy doing my job today.
It's okay.
Quick service. Oh, quick service is not complicated. I would go to Primo Piatto at the Riviera.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Yeah, we have to think about that.
We have to go check that out.
Yeah.
Because that's my, I mean, I recommend that all the time because it's an easy Skyliner ride from the Epcot.
Right.
So if it's you're on a busy weekend, you want to get away, you can sneak off to there, you can set up. Yes, I'm a spoiled food blogger who has a diet soda addiction, so I purchased the resort refill cup that lasts for 14 days.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Yeah.
And unlike over at Universal Orlando, the resort mugs you purchase for the hotels work at any of the Disney hotels.
Yes.
And so I can just go from place to place to place and be fine.
And they're good for like 2 weeks, aren't they?
Exactly 14 days, because I have it charted out to when I was supposed to be leaving, because I was supposed to be leaving Orlando exactly a certain date. So I got one 14 days before that. But now I'm staying longer, so that messed me up. That's okay.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Where do you live, and then where do you sleep when you're in Orlando?
That's a complicated subject.
Okay.
Let's go.
Would you rather not talk about it?
No, let's go with the easy part first. Currently, and I'm not. Obviously, it's more complicated when you've been a clergy member for a really long time, and I don't want to say anything disparaging about my ex-wife, because that's not the point of this, because she's a wonderful woman who does amazing things, and if I had gone through what she went through, I probably wouldn't be married to me anyway.
Okay.
Now, having said that, all of my stuff currently, because after doing this for a while living in Western Illinois, I discovered I was coming back to my house about 3 days a month. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I was like, why am I doing this? So I moved all my stuff into a storage unit. And it's been there for about 10 months now. So I'm literally a vagabond looking around the room I'm in right now with all my different airline suitcases. And so I tend to go in different places. Like I'm in a condo I tend to stay at or tends to get set up for me during these trips. It's, west of Walt Disney World. Mm-hmm. But it's not the only place that I'll tend to stay. And obviously when I go on travel trips elsewhere, we do. But yeah, I've been living by suitcase since middle of June.
Wow.
Where do you like to eat, Michael, at Disney World? Now you're going to be shy?
Let's see. My favorite is...
Your favorite is what? Okay. Skipper Canteen? That's your favorite?
Really?
That's shocking to me. Yes.
Hey, where do you pull that one out of?
Table service value at Magic Kingdom.
That is true. And that thing about that place is it took us a long time before we even tried it. I mean, we went years and years and years without even going there. And then finally we went there and we're like, wow, we've been missing out.
Yeah, that was the first table service review I did for Mouse Dining was Skipper's Canteen.
Mm-hmm. We enjoy it. Had some good meals there. And prices.
It's not going to blow you away with anything, but you're not spending $50 for an entree either.
That's true. Right.
So as things go, and you're getting better quality than you are at the Plaza or at, sorry, Crystal Palace. I love Winnie the Pooh, but you're getting better quality than you are at Crystal Palace. Mm-hmm. And you're not having to pay Be Our Guest or Cinderella's Royal Table price.
Right. Mm-hmm. So much of Magic Kingdom is the price fix. And
yes.
I mean, there are a few, Plaza and Tony's, but.
Oh, sorry. I blocked one of those out.
You blocked Tony's out of your mind.
I blocked Tony's out.
I hear it's gotten better. Have you been there lately? I mean, I hear it's not as bad as it was as worst.
But I'm a part of a food blogger kind of freelance collective where we work together to kind of trade stuff around. I'll be on the rotation to go to Tony's here pretty soon, sadly. Okay. But when they've gone, Tony's has been okay, but we kind of know what to order.
Yeah.
So it's a little different because we're freelancers. We're not normally told to go to Tony's.
Okay.
So we just kind of check every so often. And they've made some adjustments. And as long as this sounds negative, it's the only way I can say it. If your expectations are not too high, Tony's is fine.
I typically stay away from red sauce at Disney if I go Italian. I
think that's probably a good choice.
Because the red sauce is never going to be my red sauce or my mother's red sauce or my grandmother's red sauce. Or my mother-in-law's.
Pucci, he says that he wants 2 spaghetti speciale, heavy on the meatball.
Yes, exactly. It's never going to achieve that. And let's just be fair. It's the same. We'll pick on a Landry's restaurant for a second, which is why I never get to go to their media events. Rainforest Cafe, the food is fine, but I don't want to pay for, at least in Orlando, I appreciate them because the one near Universal is really good. I don't want to pay for Applebee's level food.
Right.
And pay homecoming prices.
Right. I was going to say Chili's, but there you go.
Yeah. Sorry, spoiler. The Applebee's that's near Surfside Inn and Suites at Universal Orlando, which is off property technically, is probably one of the best Applebee's I've ever eaten at.
Oh, cool. Good to know.
Just for frame of reference. But yeah, it's tricky to try to figure out what's the right value, and then we get into weird things that we're not having to experience, but we may have to experience, in the future. Of you take 2 or 3 picky grandchildren to eat. Well, they want to meet characters, but now you're spending $49 or whatever it is for Ohana breakfast for them to see the characters and eat 2 things. That's really going to be tricky. And I know you guys have broken this down about the dining plan, but it's going to be one of the tricky things when the dining plan comes back into effect fully is how you're going to use your dining plan when you have kids.
Right.
And because it's a no-win scenario. You can't. It's the thing we always used to try to tell parents that they wouldn't listen to us pastorally was the one battle that a 200-pound man cannot win against a 3-year-old is eating. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to make that child eat. And so no matter how much you complain about it, it's not going to happen. So
nope. You pay $40 for them to eat a roll.
Yes. Or I think one of my friends has a story of going with one of his picky tweens and they brought in chicken nuggets from another restaurant. And she ate like 2 chicken nuggets, and that was their entire meal for like a $50 buffet.
Yep.
And so that's part of you have to know what your family's going to eat and not going to eat. And if you haven't figured that out yet, that's a bigger problem for you. I can't help you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's tricky to evaluate because I think I've actually written these words today for a travel agency of if you're looking for a specific type of cuisine, Walt Disney World probably has it. Now, it may not be as good as the best place in New York or wherever else, but it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And so as a result, if you can find it now, we'll see if Manette's
the Indian. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
If when Eat opens, whether it will, I know it's going to be counter service, but still whether it will up the game because that still only leaves a true Thai restaurant as something.
Yeah. That's something else I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Korean would be good too. And I don't know if you know what my thing I feel Hollywood Studios needs a kosher delicatessen.
You are 100% right. I don't
give me some pastrami, some corned beef, some knishes.
Yep.
Matzo ball soup. And
it's pretty bad that knishes, you can find those at Universal Orlando and you can't find that at Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, as someone, I know it's not the same thing, but my accent betrays I'm from the South, but having lived in Boston for a long time, I totally get it's like, no, this is what you need to have.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to go with that old school Hollywood thing, you got to have the old school deli and the old, all those kind of things. I totally agree. That's a good call. I don't know where it would go as we're spending Disney's money, but I agree. It's a good idea.
Yeah. That's what I've been saying that for years. So
yeah.
John didn't tell us his Disney origin story. What is your Disney story, John? How did you get?
I was really.
When did you first start coming?
That. This was the part I was concerned about. No, we're going to do this. We'll do this quickly. Let me see. As I normally tell this story, once upon a time there was a young man who worked as a professional tennis athlete and tennis pro. He looks a lot like a lot younger version of me.
Okay.
And he was working in the Massachusetts area. Met this lovely young lady. They eventually do get married. As they're planning their wedding, she tells all these stories about her senior trip to Orlando and how things didn't go very well. And he's like, oh, this will work. I can start my marriage off correctly. We can have our honeymoon at Walt Disney World. And he does all this work to make sure we go. And we literally fall in love with the theme parks. We become annual pass holders back when, annual pass something you could actually afford. Yes, I'm making fun of that. And so that's what we did all the time. Every vacation was spent in the Orlando area. Now we eventually started going to Universal Orlando a lot more because of the more cost-effective thing. but we just kind of fell in love with the whole concept, everything we would do, everything involved. It became who we are. You know, it's the equivalent of when you have other crushers on here and they talk about all their money goes to Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Yes,
that was you.
Same thing. That was us. And so that's really where it came from. That's the short version. There's a long version. I think you got the gist.
Yeah. That's all right. David, you have a question for Jon?
What's an overrated restaurant and an underrated one?
This is going to vary depending on when you go and how you go. But as a general rule, I'm going to say in general, Be Our Guest is overrated.
Oh, yeah.
And people even have the idea about Be Our Guest being overrated. I spend a lot of time on Disney transportation because when I do these trips, most of the time I don't have a car, so I'll take an Uber to Walt Disney World and drive around. I hear lots of conversations of people talking about how wonderful and how great and how amazing Rodeo Roundup Barbecue is. I know how this group feels about that. I've been there 3 or 4 times for review. I've had pretty much the same reaction. Hollywood Brown Derby is starting to get really overrated also.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't been there in a while.
Yeah. It's starting to live off its reputation.
Okay. Just resting on its laurels. They got rid of that burger.
Yeah. Some of us are still a little bitter about the burger thing. That's a trend. The only place you can get a table service burger is Sci-Fi. So that's a struggle.
Yeah. That kind of stuff amazes me about Disney when they have something that's so popular that they get rid of it.
The burger thing I don't quite understand. We do see that a lot. A lot of seafood items are being taken off the menu.
They got rid of all the lobster at Hollywood.
Yes, they did. And at Grand Floridian Cafe, the best burger on property, the lobster thermidor burger.
Oh, yeah.
For a while. I'm still mourning that.
Yeah, myself, yes.
Because you could get that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right.
Not that we ever did that experiment, and yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Dave's done it too.
I've done it many times.
Right. And at least, and obviously other people who you know who have podcasts, I confess this, we've noticed that the lounges are not of the same quality as they were about 2 or 3 months ago.
Really?
Across property, yeah. I mean, I could name names, Nomad, Jock Lindsay's, that kind of thing. Now, on a positive side, especially with the menu change, Tiffin's at Animal Kingdom is still underrated.
Okay.
I tend to recommend Tiffin's if you can't get your number one choice for your signature dining option, because it tends to be easier to get. I technically think most days Morimoto is underrated.
Oh, I agree with that.
Most days. I know you're a Morimoto fan. I'm a large Morimoto fan also. And there's one other Disney Springs restaurant that I was thinking was significantly underrated.
House of Blues.
House of Blues for brunch is underrated.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would have to go with brunch that it's underrated.
I'm hearing good things. This is going to sound about Planet Hollywood lately. I'm hearing that it's not a bad meal, especially if you're bringing your kids. And I don't know.
It is a better option for your kids now. That's true. I think that's fair. It's not Rainforest Cafe or T-Rex level for your kids, but it's better. However, with the apparent improvement in food, and Planet Hollywood is on the list of restaurants I'm supposed to go to in the next couple of weeks, the prices have gone up dramatically at Planet Hollywood. So you've got to be careful about, the food may be better, but now you're paying $5 more for it. So it's really worth it.
Okay.
But in fairness, I mean, Disney Springs, obviously that's how I got started originally. I was covering Disney Springs a lot, and you've got 20 something table service restaurants there. So you have plenty to choose from. You know, there's a lot of quality of variance in the world of Disney Springs. And so, but Planet Hollywood's not the worst choice that it used to be. I think I did a worst restaurants or some version of that for Mickey Visit or Disney Dose or one of those kind of sites based in California. And I don't think I included Planet Hollywood in the worst list.
Okay.
In the last one. Not saying they're in the best.
No. I've heard good things about it. So I was asking you.
No, I think that's fair. It's easier for me to think because usually I think that way. Because an editor will be like, what happened when you went here? I went, oh, that's good or bad. I hadn't thought about it. So, yeah. But I always tell people this. When you're thinking in terms of your trip to Walt Disney World, and I know I'm poking the bear at some of your listeners, is you can't overlook dining at Disney Springs. I know Disney Springs can be a madhouse, and I hate going there at night on the weekends, but you can't overlook all the options you have at Disney Springs.
Yeah, so many. And And who would think that you can get some really good sushi at a bowling alley?
Correct.
I mean, you would never think that. You would just never think that.
As a blogger, I need to point out that you probably will find better sushi at Cowfish over at Universal Orlando. But you are absolutely correct. Splitsville sushi is far better than you would think it would be.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's not Morimoto, but that's not fair.
Okay.
Right.
It's not Shiki Sai.
Yeah.
And Splitsville is owned by the same company as Homecoming, right?
Right, because you have the squeeze bottle. The squeeze bottle can be used.
That's right. That's a different controversy because sometimes you can use your squeeze bottle there and sometimes you can't.
Oh, it depends on who's at the bar.
I feel in my current profession I cannot answer that question directly. So you can include whatever you want to include.
Okay. All right. Good to know. So would you say Tiffin's is the hidden gem, or is there another hidden gem?
If Tiffin's wasn't, because the price point at Tiffin's is high.
Right. A lot. Yeah.
If it weren't so high, I would include it as a hidden gem. If Storybook Dining wasn't so high, I would start to include it because they've been doing a much better job. You can't overlook Geyser Point. Mm-hmm. I'm just starting to do a lot more stuff at Geyser Point. I know we moved down a level of dining, but
but that's okay.
Give us perspective. Satuli is still the standard. It's been all along.
Yeah.
Satuli Canteen. Just going down the list of restaurants. Epcot's what you should expect. I mean, even though, in fairness, if I had a picky family, I would take them Connections Eatery every day of the week.
Yeah,
the food's not great, but it's
not
above
bad.
average. Right,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's an elevated version.
That place surprised us too, because it's another one, John, that we really haven't frequented very often. Well, really not at all until recently. And then we started going there and we were very pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about the inconsistency at Disney with, like, somebody will go to Ohana, for example, and have an amazing meal. And I will go the same night and have a terrible meal. I'll have tough meat and cold noodles and terrible service. And I mean, it went through there was a phase where you'd go in and they'd have you in and out in like 25 minutes.
Correct.
It was pretty, but that's a place that I think also for a long time was resting on its laurels that everybody wants to go to Ohana's. We're full every night. So I just did my own pet peeve. I called it Ohana's. That it's not Ohana. It's Ohana. That is my pet peeve. It is not an Irish pub. Apostrophe.
Ohana's, yes.
It's Ohana, but it's they were full every night. People were clamoring for ADRs, so it didn't matter that the food was getting worse and the service was getting worse. And then I think they tried to make it better, but I don't know. It's just, like I said, I'll hear one person say it was amazing, and then I'll hear somebody else saying it was terrible, and they'll go with the same week.
Okay. I got many thoughts about this conversation. I want to circle back and make sure I get to my main point.
Okay.
The other overlooked gem that I can't believe is still an overlooked gem, but it's still doing it. We mentioned it. We just didn't mention it as a restaurant. Is Grand Floridian Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
There's still a quality meal that you can get in there, and the dining reservations are not that hard to get.
Yeah. And I love the fact that breakfast and lunch is the same meal.
Same meal.
And if I want to eat French onion soup at 8:00 in the morning, I can. And if I want waffles at 1:00 in the afternoon, I could have it.
Because I wonder about this, and make sure we circle back to the main question. Now I'm going to sidetrack us. I don't understand why there aren't more places at Walt Disney World that have brunch menus during the week.
Steakhouse 71, it makes me so angry because I'll be there at 10:30 and I want a burger. I don't like Steakhouse 71's breakfast menu at all. It's not. My friends all want to go there for the bottomless mimosas, and I don't like what's on the breakfast menu. Well,
the quality is a little inconsistent, I can say, having been there this week. And so that kind of stuff. But back to Ohana, and spoiler alert, between the time we record this and the time this releases, I will be doing a review at Ohana. But it will be a very casual review because I will have a companion with me, which is going to be scary in my new world. So we can talk about that off camera. Okay. Having said that, I literally have done reviews there before where I dine and it is great. And I do that standard thing that food bloggers do. I have the vegan version, but have the plant-based version. I do a lot of vegan, gluten-free dining. It always throws me off when I'll do, I'll do something for Attractions Magazine, and Matt will order the vegan food. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to order now, because that's what I always order. But we put those together, and I'll have a great meal, and the service will be wonderful. And I sometimes am suspicious that because my name is on the reservation, since I know the system now, some of the chefs do know me as John, the food guy.
Okay.
And they will interrogate any of their staff that know me beforehand. We've seen that happen. So I may get a little better quality than the average person. I will admit that. So I try to skew that sometimes in the reviews. But I'll have friends. I'll send people in. I sent somebody into Homecoming just the other day, and they were like, oh, the food was great. That's all I needed to know. But we'll send people into Ohana, and like you said, they'll eat 2 hours after me. Because we did this at Kona Cafe when Kona Cafe opened. And the meal I got was great. The meal they got was terrible. And it's really, really inconsistent, and it's hard to understand why. And I want to be critical of that, but I dine a lot at Universal Orlando. I dine at SeaWorld. I dine at all these places, and they say that they're doing the same thing since the COVID experience. We know this for a fact. 30% of hospitality staff of any kind left Orlando during COVID.
Yeah.
And so you don't just magically have those people. Some of those people were more experienced and have forgotten more about food than the three of us know together.
Right.
And so, you don't just build that back up quickly. So I know that's some of the factor, but it's a struggle to be consistent. I tend to recommend, if you want consistency, you order entrees, not skillets or buffets or prefix menus. Yeah. Because you get a lot more factory. However, that also means you're probably spending more. You're going to Topolino's and spending $125 a person. Dining can be tricky, and we also got to remember that's the hard thing that I experience as a food blogger. Is I guess that's what I am now. Is just because I like something doesn't mean that most people are going to like it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because, and you have how does this appeal to someone? Like, we'll pick on the Festival of the Holidays. There were 2 returning items from the Los Posadas, the holiday kitchen in the Mexico area. And there was a tamale and a giant tostada. And some people were like, well, these are really spicy. I'm like, no, they're not. But then I also remember, yes, John, you went to seminary in Texas. Yes, you lived in Southeast Asia where you looked for the chili sauce when you woke up in the morning.
So your tolerance is a little different.
Right. But then I went to the, I'm going to blank on what it was called, the Noche Buena booth. It's kind of, it's in what we used to call Future World. And they have a vegan tamale, same as it was last year, with a red chili sauce on top of it. That had legitimate spice. I actually felt that was legitimate spice, even for a theme park. So it's a very relative kind of thing. And I know from chatting with a lot of international guests, that's the struggle. Is they're afraid to try a lot of things because they're worried about the spice. And so, how do you write a review based on that target demographic?
Yeah, that's difficult. Yeah.
If you could figure that out for me, that would make my job a lot easier. I'd appreciate that if you could do that work for me. So when some people write stuff for some book that comes out every year, I wouldn't know who those people were. Whatever they are, that's the tricky part, is how do you explain that in 100 words? Yeah. And some of those people are really talented and some of us aren't. And so we just go from there. But yeah, it can be tricky.
As far as festivals go, I always feel like there are certain cuisines that people are more comfortable with, people that aren't adventurous eaters. So I feel like because of that, you'll always have a long line in China. You'll always have a long line, inexplicably to me, in Italy, where the choices are terrible and they charge way too much for them. But they can, because the line is, down to Japan practically to get a ravioli that I could get in the freezer section at Winn-Dixie. But
spoiler alert! Please consult Attractions Magazine for the best and worst festival food items, and there may have been a reference.
Dave and I talked the other night on our live stream about the Festival of the Holidays and the fact that they're just frying pizza dough this year and charging $8 for it. Yeah.
Well, good news. The fried dough didn't make it to the worst list.
Okay.
But I'll give you a hint. It didn't make it to the best list either.
So. Yeah. Yeah. So that one makes me crazy but I see why, because the line is long and they charge $11 for a ravioli. That means they're not charging enough. And next year they could have a $15.
Good news. Their most expensive item this year was only $10 for.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
But it may have made the worst list. So you take that for what it's worth. So,
was it that salmon and bow tie thing?
I think we have a winner.
Oh, okay. Yes. We talked about that the other night on High Stream.
But, yeah, so because I have had every single festival food item as of this recording.
But now, okay, so you at the top of the show, you said you feel like you have to finish everything. So how do you do that?
Well, in fairness, if you eat it as a group, I don't feel we have to finish everything.
Okay, so you take a few bites.
I don't have to finish everything, but I need to make sure it's finished. Like I was with my friend Xavier yesterday, who runs Thrills Taste Travels, one of the sites I wrote. And he's amazing about ordering these food and then all of a sudden I'll see him push it towards me and I'm like, oh, you need me to try this now. I now feel obligated to eat all of it, which can not always be good when you're having, the melted snowman cookie and the Wookiee cookie and you're trying every single sweet at Hollywood Studios. Not that we did that.
Will you push away something that's just plain awful?
I've only done that once.
Really?
And I've already mentioned it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying hot dog.
I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Okay. All right. Dave?
Well, since he's a food critic, I have to ask because I have a few of my favorite places and I've already lit it out.
That your favorite places, I don't like them already. So go ahead.
Exactly. Okay.
He doesn't like hot dogs. He doesn't like pasta. He doesn't like sweets.
What are your thoughts on Yak and Yeti?
Until my most recent trip, I thought Yak and Yeti would have qualified as underrated. It's amazing that a Landry's restaurant in the park with way more restrictions in the park than they have at Disney Springs. I don't want to bore your podcast with all the restrictions Disney has on third parties, but in the park, the restrictions are KGB level on what they can do. I'm impressed they can pull off stuff and make it. I know it's Americanized Asian food. Yeah. I get that. But until my last experience, which was just about 3 weeks ago, I would have said Yak and Yeti was definitely the go-to. I can tell you that when I recommend people to dine at Animal Kingdom, the average guest, I tell them to go to Yak and Yeti.
Okay. So you had a bad experience 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, but apparently that matches the experience of some of my colleagues also.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going in January, so we'll let you know how our experience is.
Okay. Well, make sure you let me know when you go in January, so I'll make sure not to be in town.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
He and I are avoiding each other now.
That's
a running joke now after I, stalked her at Contemporary.
Right.
Raglan Road.
I love Raglan Road. Probably they have the best source of chicken. The quality of chicken they get is much higher than even at the restaurant we've already mentioned earlier that specializes in chicken. If I weren't getting fried chicken, I would order it at Raglan Road.
Okay.
My main criticism of Raglan Road is they changed that menu so much.
Oh, yeah, they do. Tell me about it.
It is so hard to keep track of. But you've got to remember they've got a basic chicken dish that they modify from. They have a basic pasta dish they modify from, and a basic pork dish, and they build off of that. I mean, I know this is not the right comparison, but think in terms of Yum Brand, Taco Bell, KFC. It's really only 5 or 6 ingredients for each one of those restaurants. Right. They just package them differently.
Right.
And we all fall for it because I do. I go to Taco Bell, once a month. I admit that. But, I think it does a good job with that, and it's good. You just got to kind of watch that balance.
We've noticed that with the menu and I guess during COVID, things started to disappear from a lot of restaurants. So, and
that's a true across Orlando or the Orlando area. Well, I'll use the vague term. Anything that people think of as Orlando, you see that across restaurants everywhere.
Dave, you only have 2 favorite restaurants. You have more favorite restaurants?
You got another one, Dave?
Well, I get stuck on certain restaurants, and Tony is always...
We've heard this.
Yes, and she gets on me. She's like, Dave, you need to expand your cuisine.
What's your other one? CityWorks?
I found House of Blues. I think we went to brunch there, and I was like amazed. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not come here before? Certain restaurants like that will surprise you, and that's why I've got to get out and try more things because I'm probably missing a lot. And I've been trying more things lately.
In fairness, Dave, I totally get most people who come to Walt Disney World. They go to the same restaurants, do the same thing every single time. Like they're trying to recreate. Sorry, I may be doing a little post-therapy session with myself. You try to create the same things you always did. Well, maybe you don't want to recreate that. Maybe you want to try something new.
Yeah.
But the problem is, which is, if there were a food guide that would help you with this, that would be wonderful. I would hope that we would be announcing that soon. But people don't want to try something new in case it might not be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is not fair because restaurants shouldn't do this, but we all know it's true. You don't go to certain places and order certain entrees.
That's true.
But if it's on the menu, it should be good, right?
You would think.
And that's the tricky part is, how do we juggle that? Obviously there's obvious exceptions, but you don't go to a seafood place and order a steak unless they're owned by Gibson Steakhouse. Then of course you can do that at the Boathouse. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, there's general rules like that, but what if this is borderline misogynistic here. The husband really wants a good steak, but the wife doesn't want to have something like that.
Right.
And so where do you go?
That happens.
Yeah, it totally happens. That's why I'm being fair about this, because
I've had good steaks at Flying Fish and Citrico's. I'm going to tell you that. So
there are good steaks there.
And I just had a good meal at Sear and Sea, which is when people have to they have to take a step out of the typical bubble. That's what we're trying to do lately. So I had some amazing fish dishes, and our friend Andy, who tried to call before but didn't answer the phone, he said he had his best Disney steak there at Sear and Sea, even though it's not technically Disney.
Okay, two things. One, if you keep mentioning Andy on the podcast, he's going to keep calling during the podcast. So I know that because I'm one of those people. Two, I agree, but I go off property a lot. Obviously, I've confessed that I visit that other resort. That's,
yes, you do.
Actually, in the city, in the city limits of Orlando, not outside of it.
Right. What's your favorite, totally off-site place to go if you just want to have a good meal?
I'm going to lose incredible food blogger credit.
It's okay. You're going to say McDonald's, Steak and Shake.
Not that bad.
Portillo's. Portillo's is good.
I'm based in Illinois. Portillo's is on every corner.
Oh, okay. So it's not a big deal for you.
It's not a big deal to me. People are like, let's go to Portillo's. I'm like, really? I'm going to get off the plane at O'Hare and I'm going to pass 12 of those on the train. Okay. It's not going to be that big a deal. This goes back to going to seminary in Texas and working there. Because we didn't have it where I was, I go to Chewy's. Okay. Which is just west of Walt Disney World in that area. Okay. The Nightmare 192.
Yeah, I don't like driving on 192. That's why I've started staying in Flamingo Crossings now.
I agree.
So actually, that was a question I was going to ask you. An area where Disney has struggled is Mexican food, and
they've struggled with Tex-Mex food. They have some good Mexican food.
Okay, so where do you think is the best? Because I've eaten at Frontera Cucina, and I've eaten at Mexican La Hacienda, and I've eaten at Rosa Mexicano. So what's you tell me what's
I am a Tex-Mex person, not a Mexican person. Okay. So Rick Bayless, I've written lots of articles about this. Rick Bayless is not trying to create Tex-Mex food.
No, he's Mexican.
He's trying to create true Mexican/Latin food, which he does a great job with. But if you walk in there expecting something that resembles quality Mexican food, you're like, what is this?
You might not recognize what.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I've only been to Rosa Mexicano.
I liked Frontera. But it was a little pricey for what it was.
It is a little pricey. I've only been to Rosa Mexicano one time. If I had to choose, that's what I would choose if I were looking for a Tex-Mex fix. But I make this joke over at Universal Orlando because they have antojitos. I'm like, why would you get Tex-Mex because literally I know how to do it. I can walk to a better Tex-Mex place from Universal Orlando. It takes a little over a mile to walk there, and then I can walk back.
Right.
Why would you do that?
I have zest and appetite, and I like food.
But there are people that just will not leave the bubble. They just will not. I know. They will not venture out. They will not. And especially now that Uber and Lyft makes it so easy, that's why we're really starting to do that more. We're going to go in February to Four Flamingos, which I'm really looking forward to.
That place is nice, but you need to be ready for different styles of food.
Yes. Well, yeah. I'm a little bit... The people that I'm going with are mostly foodies, so
you should be good. But the problem is, so this circles back to the cosmic ray phenomenon, the Ohana. I knew something else I was going to say. You know that Ohana is still the hardest reservation to get on property. still even today, even though the food quality may have dropped and the service may have dropped. And you can message me after this podcast and we'll see if it really did drop, or I'll probably have a review somewhere for somebody. The problem is with Tex-Mex, and Rick Bayless makes fun of this all the time. If you just throw enough sauce and enough cheese on top of something, people won't complain about it at a Tex-Mex restaurant. And here's the problem. He's not wrong.
Yeah. And give him some free chips.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep. Get him started.
Chips were bottomless.
Which you don't get from Terra Cucina, but that's I'm bitter.
No.
Even
I had some queso fundido and I was out of chips. And
yeah. Back to our joke about hosted bloggers. Even when you're hosted, they expect you to pay for the chips. It's weird like that.
Okay.
How dare they?
When you can we talk about that for a minute? When
I'll be happy to.
When you are #hosted, are you under like what you can say, or can you speak freely, or do you feel like you can't, or are you told you can't, or?
As someone who's a freelancer, well, here, I'll give you a direct answer. Let's pull it away from this, and I'll get in trouble with them. Okay. There was a media event at Four Rivers Barbecue. Okay. Not the food truck.
No, the people that own Polite Pig and right.
No, that's Ravenous Pig. No, different.
Okay. All right.
But they have a bunch of quick service restaurants in their Orlando area. Okay. And they did a media event. We were out to see some of their new stuff, and their PR person, and she's great. They just hand you a sheet and say, "Here's the hashtags to use. Here's the things." And literally, I was like, "Okay, you have put all the food on a rectangle tray." Now, if you know photos, that's the easiest way to take a photo of the food, and it fits perfectly on your screen for a blog. They've already done all the work for you. Okay. Just take the photo and walk away. It's not that hard. But they never, at least in my experience, because they do know who I write for, so they know I'm not going to be able to. They never tell you can't say certain things. I am aware that one large resort that, celebrates the mouse does tell people they can't say certain things. Now, they're not rigid about it. It's not,
But you might not get hosted again.
I believe, based on my freelance status, I can't answer that, but I believe you're probably correct.
Okay.
So you've got to be careful about that. Remember,
Dave and I will never be hosted.
Remember, if you have been listening carefully, you have figured out the sites that I write for.
Yes.
And some of these sites specialize in not doing the reviews and not being hosted.
So let me ask you a question about your personal ethics, and so
you're going to ask Pastor John a question about his personal ethics.
Go for it. Do you feel like there are certain clickbaity sites that you just will not write for, or can you be selective at this point in your career, or do you still have to work for some sites that you don't have to tell me which ones?
I would flip.
If you don't want to answer that, you don't.
No, you're good. I will flip the question.
Okay. Because I have some sites that are truly beloved to me.
I know they are truly beloved to you, which is why I confessed, because I actually used beloved in a title for a blog at one time. So I was like, oh man, I did that. There are some sites that I have chosen not to work with.
Okay.
They would be uncomfortable using the term clickbaity, but we all know who they are. And there are some sites that I have worked for that we discovered quickly that I can't just sit there and you send me a photo, because that's how most of these sites work. Now I'm being critical, letting you behind the scenes. Okay. Most of the sites that you get and I'm not giving it away with this word, but obviously I am, that you get your news from, or your blog from, or your ears from, or any of those things from, the person writing the article is not the person who was in the park.
Okay.
Basically, it's like a news agency would be. They go out and report, they send the message back on a Slack feed or something like that. And then the person takes the photo and a few comments and writes an article about it. That's why sometimes you read articles from some really sites that do a really good job with the news, and it looks like they just kind of piece something together, and an editor threw a paragraph at the front and a paragraph at the end.
Right.
You know why it looks that way? Because they did.
Right.
And
there are some sites where I know for a fact that they just copied and pasted Disney's press release and ran it. And
yes.
He's just agreeing. He's not saying anything, but I know because I have access to the WDW news,
right? And here's the problem though.
Website.
When you do that, and if you do that in the first 6 hours that press release comes out, that actually creates clicks for your site.
Mm-hmm.
So it reinforces the whole model. Okay. And I'm being holier than thou literally at this moment of there's a new model coming. We will not depend upon that. Okay. So that's why I can be holier than thou. But you've got to remember the person writing, the writers they have that are, because I've done it for sites. You name a site, I probably have done it where I've worked. Mm-hmm. I commit to 2 or 3 shifts a week, sitting in my little ivory tower in Illinois, and they'll send the information and I'll type it up and then it'll go out as quickly as we can get it out. There's something missing sometimes about, like, I'll just be honest. It's a lot easier for me to write a review about what I wrote than to tell someone else how to write it.
Yeah.
And so that can be tricky, but there's just a practical issue of you need to be first because we all want to be first. And then we want to be the ones that everybody click through. So it becomes very tricky, but we discovered very quickly that I couldn't write 27 articles about whatever piece of merchandise was new at Walt Disney World very quickly. So I moved on from that side.
Right. You have
very, very soon.
There are going to be people doing it better than you if it's not something that is your thing.
Yeah, and I would do that. And I'll be like, "Oh, this is not working."
And I'll be honest with you, David and I, when we first started, we thought we had to take pictures of everything we ate and every fireworks show and we quickly realized that there were so many people that could take better pictures than I can, and can. So I'm going to put my camera down. I'm going to put my phone down, Dave. But no, seriously, good. I don't really bother taking a lot of pictures of food anymore unless it's something that is kind of off the beaten path. Like if I go someplace like Sea, like not a lot of people are reporting on that place.
Right.
So I might take pictures someplace like that, but I'm not going to take pictures of my Ohana pot stickers because somebody else has taken a better picture of them.
I've taken that as a personal affront.
Why?
Because I'll be going to Ohana in less than 48 hours. So, but it's my job.
That's your job. And for me, as somebody, I'm not getting paid. Dave and I do this as a hobby. We do this for fun. And so
what? You're not getting hosted all the time and doing all this
Dave
stuff?
and I have never been hashtag hosted. Never. Oh. I think Mr. Damaro might have a restraining order out on me. He doesn't want me near him. But
I think we both have restraining orders against him for different reasons. So that's a different discussion. I'll let you figure out what that means. But just in fairness, back to the hosted conversation.
It's not because you like his tight jeans.
It has nothing to do with that. No.
Okay.
Sorry. Just to clarify, even though, that's a whole different conversation. Don't assume just because I'm Pastor John that we have issues there. Okay. Did I get around that carefully? Good.
Yes.
I tend to, as a freelancer, I tend not to get hosted very often.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where another aspect of what I do. Like, say, for instance, I go to a media event for Attractions Magazine or for Mickey Visit or for some like where they're hosted. I now only can write that for that site.
Okay.
Because there's some ethical issues there.
Yeah. Okay.
Or say Mouse Dining is paying for the meal.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Well, then guess what? They're only getting the article.
Right. Of course.
Whereas, let's say, like, I think you made fun of me correctly, by the way. You did it correctly. Well done. You had your episode about the hosted bloggers being hosted or whatever. The Facebook.
Oh, and the person at the buffet.
It was just so funny as I'm driving from Kissimmee to Universal Orlando listening to that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't even know what we go through to make sure your face is not in the photos, whatever.
Right.
Okay. But,
right.
And so I'm like, and then I think it was 2 days later, I'm at the SeaWorld Christmas celebration of being hosted, but I was invited as a freelancer. So I wrote 7 different articles about that, which, spoiler alert, 7 different articles is 7 times more money.
Okay.
So it makes a difference. That's why I do a lot of buying my own food. Then I can write it for lots of different places. Like when Shiki Sai opened, when we all were shocked when Shiki Sai opened that day. Well, I was in the park and a couple other news bloggers were in the park and some food blog ladies were in the park, and we all raced there. And I was like, okay. And I'm literally on the phone. Hey, who wants this article? Hey, who wants this? I just want to know. I mean, I'm like, right. I was like, I have truly become a food blogger. And so I did like eight blogs that night. But as somebody made fun of me, they're like, you don't have a real job. I'm like, you're right, I don't have a real job until you have to stay up till 3 a.m. typing
getting these stories out. So how do you make them different if you've got to write 7 articles on the same restaurant?
What I usually do is either I will, depending on what the target audience is, I'll focus on a specific entree, or I'll focus on who should be coming, or I'll do like a generic review. I come at it from different angles. And the beauty of new restaurants is that's very easy. Like I have 3 articles halfway written for Eat when it finally opens, because I'm I'm stocking it. One will be who should go to this. Mm-hmm. One will be, here's the entree section of the menu. What's the best value? And one will be just an overall general review. And those are 3 totally different things. And so you have to kind of figure that out.
And if it's good, which I'm hoping it is,
it better be.
You could do an article about why we needed this.
Yes, because we did.
If you need any more help, John, just call me.
Trust me, I need lots of help, so that's not a problem. Because
why we needed this.
I don't know if you know. I don't know if you're not, but 150 something graduate school hours in seminary didn't teach me how to be a food blogger.
No, I bet.
It didn't. I don't know why. But if you'd like me to answer the Asian culture, because I wrote an article about that recently, because I still write in the faith-based world. The Asian perspective of the Asian perspective of how people of faith can view good and evil. I can write that for you in 10,000 words or less.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but I don't think
I don't know when I'm going to need that, but
I don't think you want to read it though. But.
So, and when Disney announces they are opening a kosher delicatessen, I hope in your article you give me credit that this was my idea, that Josh finally listened to me.
Okay, first rule of being a theme park blogger, you give no one credit.
Okay.
I don't know if you're aware of that. It's always your idea.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if you knew that.
Mm-hmm. No. I'll just curse you and shake my fist when I read the article.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay. All right,
Dave. I'll become what I make fun of.
David, anything else for John?
I found out what he thought about my favorite restaurants. That was the most important thing.
That is the most important thing.
Absolutely. He likes Satuli Canteen.
Satuli Canteen has still been one of the top 3 quick service restaurants at Walt Disney World since the day it opened.
See?
I would argue that Primo Piatto may have passed it.
Michael, not my favorite place to stay, but Michael loves Pop Century. That's his favorite resort. So I might have to take the Skyliner next time we stay at Pop and go to Primo Piatto. Yeah,
speaking of food courts that have devalued in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I know.
All up that row, all the all-stars did a whole in one day. You should feel bad for my digestive system. I tried all the vegan food that was offered at the food courts, those 5 food courts.
Yummy.
In one day. Well, it was yummy in the past. It wasn't that day because they're all the same now. Because remember how what is it? End Zone? No, that's All Stars.
Yes, of course. The one at Art of Animation used to be really good.
Used to be different, and it was pretty good. Now it's just the same.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you consider like a bargain in the Disney food world, or extraordinary value?
Believe it or not, I think I have a review on Pirates and Princesses when I did it, because I couldn't believe it when I went. And apparently everyone's going to go to the Riviera, because apparently that's the only place I go. I'm going to go back to Primo Piatto again. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I ordered the croque monsieur, which is obviously a variation of French ham, grilled cheese.
Right.
And when you order a side there, you can get fries. I think there's a slaw. You can get a cup of soup, or you can get a side salad. Well, I ordered the side salad because I'm a food blogger, and oh my gosh, any excuse to have any nutrition go inside of me is awesome. Yes. This side salad, if I'd have bought it in the park, would have cost me $7 or $8. Mm-hmm. And it was probably one of the best side salads I've had at Walt Disney World. And it comes in a large bowl. The entree was only $12.
All right, Dave, we're going to have to head over there.
Yeah, he's got
just message me. I hear I'm around here often.
I heard you lurk in the Contemporary, though.
I do. That
happens to be my favorite spot.
I do, but I think I've got all the data on Contemporary. They haven't changed anything lately. Okay. So you're probably safe.
Okay. All right.
And I have other places to go plug in my laptop now.
All right.
I know where all the plugins are at Walt Disney World.
I bet. If anybody has a battery dying, actually, that's often me. I need a list, John. I need a list.
Speaking of which, let me see if we've covered this already. Primo Piatto, that would be a good.
They have a place to plug in my phone. Okay, great.
Make sure you look under the seats.
Okay,
you will discover them.
All right, John. Thank you so much. This has been welcome. Thanks for indulging me. Really, no. Dave and I have been talking about. We got to get him on. And we just have had so much. But I'm so glad we finally sat down with you, got to know you a little better. I can't wait, Dave. You're going to finally, hopefully, meet him soon. I hope, maybe.
Yeah, we got to get back in the parks. Yeah.
If you got to hurry up before it turns hot, and you come back to the parks.
I know this is my favorite time of the year to go, so I need to really get going because I'm missing out.
I mean, I wore like a Spirit jersey and everything yesterday. Or the other day when it was cold.
Yes, it was very cold. Tuesday
it was Florida cold. Sorry, those of you who live in the Midwest or live north. It was Florida cold.
But it really does get like cold. Like people, they laugh at us, but
it's got the little bit of humidity with it. So to me, it's just it cuts right through you.
The 7 days a year that it is cold here, it's a factor. I can say that because all my stuff is sitting up where it snowed like a foot.
There you go.
Last week. I'm sure at some point when this site I keep mentioning finally launches, I'm sure I will come beg for a short time to talk about it on your podcast. So just I'm registering that so that Dave can edit this out of the podcast later.
We'd love to have you back. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
So if anybody needs a review of a lamb chop on a glazed donut, Jon Self is your man. You can find him lurking all over Facebook and all the Disney sites.
That's fair.
Friends of the Disney Crush is where I hope you'll be, but I've seen John everywhere. And if you can't find him, apparently the Riviera is now the place to go.
Riviera is pretty much, Primo Piatto is the place to go, especially if my resort mug needs to be refilled.
Okay. Well, John, thank you so much. Dave, you guys got to get together eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll run into each other at the park, so I'm sure at one point. But yeah, it was a blast having you on, John. It was great to get to know you a little better.
Dave's going to do. Thank you. I'm sure Dave's going to show up December 10th at Walt Disney World because I will have flown out of town by then.
That's
just waiting.
We have friends coming in that day.
I'm going to spend something I've never gotten to do in like 30 years. Spend Christmas with my parents because
nice.
You never get to do that. So I've dedicated like 3 weeks just not to do that.
That's awesome.
So that's why I'll be gone. So you can visit then, Tony.
So maybe we'll see you in January. We have 2 trips in January planned. So.
Sounds good. Yep. I'm not hard to find. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Right.
Take it easy.
Night.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
I think that's it. All right.